Hello everybody, welcome back to Simple Gaming Review. Today I have a video that is going to be not about the PlayStation 5 or my Nintendo Switch 2, but it's actually about a older game system, which is the Sega Genesis. 16-bit awesomeness. So the reason why I wanted to make this video is I've been playing some Sega Genesis lately, and I have quite the history with the Sega Genesis because I had one of those flashback systems that was Genesis Flashback, made by At Games, terrible company, and my At Games Sega Genesis Mini broke. I also had the Sega Genesis 3 core system, and that one had a very bad locking mechanism. It would basically lock, whatever you call it, it would basically have like a death grip on my cartridges, which would lead to the pins breaking on my Sega Genesis Core System 3. So this Genesis right here was my classic mini edition. I never actually owned the original system, just the 3 and the At Game systems, but I do like this Sega Genesis. It's very well designed, looks amazing, even by today's standards. And I started playing some Sega Genesis recently. I do really like this console. I don't really talk too much about Sega on my channel. I don't really talk about Genesis too much either. I have a lot more Nintendo videos and PlayStation videos on my YouTube channel, even Xbox, surprisingly. But I do love Sega. I do own the Sega Saturn. I did make a video about that. I do have my Sega Genesis Mini. I actually got this system for Christmas from my mom, which was like, oh my god, like probably when the console came out. What was that, 5 years ago maybe? 8? I don't know. It was a long time ago. But I've had this Sega Genesis Mini in my collection for a very long time. Still functions, still works. I still got my controls for it. Yeah, it's a pretty cool console. I also modified mine so I can actually add Afterburner to my Sega Genesis Mini. But some of my favorite games on the Sega Genesis would be Columns. I like Altered Beast. I like Afterburner. Amazing, great, fantastic game. And obviously I do like the Sonic games. I'm trying to think what else I really like on the console. Road Rage, I think it's called. It's also pretty fun. I also think that the Sega Genesis has one of the best controllers ever made. This thing is very comfortable, very huge and massive. And it's overall just a very good console. So, the one thing I do want to say is a Sega Genesis Mini, or the original, worth picking up today in 2025. Well, a lot of the games are super duper fun, very addictive. It might not be a PS5, might not be a Switch 2, but the Sega Genesis is overall cheaper, the games are cheaper, and it's a very reliable system. Again, I've had my Mini since it came out. Christmas, like, however long ago it was, I can't even remember, that's how long ago it was, but overall though, the Sega Genesis is a great system. I think it is still worth it in 2025. Some people might say, well, you can just pick up a collection on PlayStation, Xbox, or Nintendo. But I do like that the original feel and the original experience with the classic controller. But this design, though, Sega definitely did a fantastic job, in my opinion, with the overall design of the Sega Genesis. Its high definition graphics and everything. I just love the overall look of it, the design of it. And I think I've made videos where I said that I do prefer most Nintendo consoles over Sega consoles. But I do think that if I did live during that era with the Super Nintendo, Sega Genesis, with the first, like, major, huge, big console war, I do think I would end up with both systems, possibly. But just looking at this by itself, I would definitely buy this console. because it just looks so cool. It has this iconic look. It's black and nice. Has this really epic look to it. The Sega Genesis symbol is right here, the logo, 16-bit. It's just pretty cool. Design is awesome. Sega Genesis has some of the best games ever made on the system. Columns might not be Tetris, but Columns for the Sega Genesis is a very fun game. One of my favorite games on the Sega Genesis, a game I always go back to, isn't actually Sonic. It's usually Columns, because Columns is such a relaxing, fun experience. And then obviously the gameplay starts to get intense and faster. But Columns for the Sega Genesis, I would say, is worth it, definitely. And then there's another game I used to play a long time ago. Oh, I forgot what it was. I used to have the game cartridge, but the issue was I sold my old Sega Genesis stuff when I was probably like 10, 11, 12, whatever age I was, because I had the death grip on my Sega Genesis Core System 3, so my pin started to break. So I ended up selling a lot of my stuff, but I had the game Pirates Gold for the Sega Genesis. I think it's a rare game, but Pirates Gold is a super fun game. You play as pirates, you sail on the sea with your men, you have to basically capture gold, you have to fight other pirates, you have to try to like rank up and just... It's a game that takes a lot of hours to get really good at. But Pirates Gold, super fantastic game for Sega Genesis. If you're somebody who's new to the Sega Genesis, or you're somebody who wants to buy one, Pirates Gold is fantastic. But if you want a newer Sega Genesis, and you want to have HD, there is clone systems, and you can also just buy the Sega Genesis Mini, the 1 or the 2. I think the 2 is more expensive. I also think it's a little bit more rare, because they did a limited amount of them. But if you could find the Sega Genesis Mini Classic Edition, or whatever they called it, the Sega Genesis Mini, you could modify this if you have a PC, and you can just add whatever game you want. There's a whole bunch of YouTube tutorials on there, and Sega doesn't really care if you use ROMs, the same way Nintendo cares, you know? But anyway, I just want to make a quick video on the Sega Genesis. I've been making a lot of content about Switch 2, I made some content about the PlayStation 5, and I wanted to make a retro video, and I just want to talk about the Sega Genesis. This console's great. I do love mine. I've always kept it in my collection, and it's one of those consoles I also like because I got it for Christmas, and that just kind of makes it 10 times more special to me. But anyway, I'm in the video. Hope you all enjoyed. Leave a like, comment down below what you think about the Sega Genesis, and let me know if you ever owned the Sega Genesis, if you still have a Sega Genesis, and what games are your favorite on the Sega Genesis. By far, my favorite games would be Columns, Altered Beast, and Afterburner would be my 3 most favorite Sega Genesis games, as well as Pirates Gold. But anyway, Sega Genesis is great, awesome console, even in 2025. It's a great system. Just to let everyone know, it's high-definition graphics. You can't go wrong with high-definition graphics, okay? You can't go wrong with it. 16-bit goodness. The games look great. They play well. They're very addictive. The controller is very big and nice. Easy to grip. Sega Genesis has an amazing design. And it's just overall a great retro system that has a great experience. And if you're somebody who is looking for a retro game system that's fun, definitely pick up a Sega Genesis. Anyway, peace out. Hope you all enjoyed the video. Comment down below again what you think. And I hope you all have a lovely day or night, and peace. Oh yeah, Sega Genesis. High definition graphics. Oh yeah.